it seems like because society taught you that somebody outside of you or something outside of you made you feel that way, but it's not possible, is it? Because it was always within you, and nobody and nothing has the ability to do that to you. It's just that you were taught by society that when certain circumstances occurred, that you should generate that feeling and focus on it. And then tell yourself the story that something outside of you made that happen, but it was never true. Now, this brings me to the first of the practical tips that I'd like to share with you today. And these are practical tips that you can work with to apply this insight that I've just shared. So, the key insight is that you hold the power within you. Everything that you need and want is within you. Nobody and nothing outside of you controls that. So, that's the key insight. That is that powerful truth. And these 5 tips that I'm going to share are practical ways that you can begin to integrate that into your life so that this is not just some idea that you heard once from some bearded guy living in a apparently in a sauna, but this is actually something that you can begin to live in your heart and in your life so that this can be real for you, so that you can experience this for yourself. So, the first of these practical tips is to slow down internally. In other words, mindful awareness. Now, the fact of the matter is, and this might be somewhat surprising to realize, but once you start to notice it, you'll see that it's true, that most people are not actually living and present to what's happening. Instead, they are reacting based on their beliefs about what happened in the past. Again, might seem shocking, but it's actually true. When you start to pay attention, you'll notice that this is in fact real. Because notice, how many times in your life did you misunderstand something? It turns out it's much more often than you realize. And it's because of exactly what I described. Most people are simply on autopilot. They formed beliefs in the past based on their past experiences. So we're not even talking about the reality of what happened then because they weren't present then either. They just formed some beliefs. And then they've been repeating those same beliefs over and over and over and over and over. They just apply them to whatever is happening because there's enough of a pattern match for it to make sense to them. Now, of course, that's worked well enough, again, to help you to survive, but it's keeping you in survival mode. This is really important to understand. You don't want to stay in survival mode. When you stay in survival mode, you feel constantly insecure. Does that make sense? If you're in survival mode, you don't feel safe. But that's not because life's not safe. That's because your programming teaches you that it's not safe. So as long as you continue to operate from that old programming, you can't change anything. That's how important this first tip is. When you slow down internally, when you have more mindful awareness for the first time in your life, you are able to make change. Until this happens, nothing can change except for by divine intervention. But if you want to be the agent of change, you have to slow down and become aware. It's just a fact. So, as I said, most people are just operating from their beliefs and they project that onto the present. And just notice what that causes. That causes, first of all, a lot of hurt and pain in you because you're reacting mostly, most of those beliefs are based on possible threats that you detected in the past. So you're just looking out there in the world and you're just constantly seeing possible attacks, possible threats, possible dangers. So you're reacting to that. What is that going to do to you? It's going to cause a lot of stress, isn't it? I mean, don't you notice that? So that number one is it's a lot of stress. Number two is that it leads to a lot of misunderstandings, which causes for you a lot of lost opportunities. And it also causes a lot of conflicts in relationships that are completely unavoidable if and when you learn to slow down. Now, I'll share an example of this from my own life. So, about a month ago, I was giving a presentation. Many of you might have been there, in which I was introducing this idea of discovering and living from true purpose. And at the end of that meeting, I opened it up to questions, and one person began speaking. And when they began speaking, it sounded to me like it was a little bit critical. And I had a thought, and the thought was, I'm about to be attacked. So that thought, fortunately, I am not in the habit of believing my thoughts because I live what it is that I'm talking about. Have put all of this into practice for the last 12, 13 years. So because I know that this is life changing. This is absolutely essential. So I was sitting there and I had the thought this person is about to attack me. And I just watched that happen. And in just a moment, what happened was that this person was actually describing how much they had benefited from the things that I've shared, and that they were encouraging other people present to also work with, receive, and work with the things that I had shared. So I had completely misunderstood with that first thought. But if I had not been in the habit of slowing down, of having that mindful awareness, what would have happened? Something very different would have happened. And by the way, if that had happened, I would not have earned the right to have given that presentation in the first place. So, can you see how this could make a big difference in your life if you learned how to slow down enough that you could be aware and present without reacting to all the old programming? That can make a huge difference. So, of course, maybe that sounds great. You say, Joey, fine, sounds wonderful, fantastic. How do I do it? Right. So now when I say mindful awareness, for some people, that's going to conjure up the image of maybe a monk with a shaved head and saffron robes sitting in lotus posture in meditation for 8 hours a day. Right. And that might seem out of reach for you for good reason. So I'm going to share with you a way in which you can experience Zen like calm and awareness without having to stare at a wall for 8 hours a day. And this is a method that I call the Active Relaxation Method. Many of you have heard me talk about this before, and you'll probably hear me talk about it many more times because it is so life changing. This is one of the most powerful things that I ever discovered. And I discovered this in 2012 when my life had reached a real critical turning point because I had been uh, killing myself with all of that stress for so many years. And it had gotten to a point where everything had fallen apart. My career had fallen apart, my friendships had fallen apart, and my health had fallen apart. For 2 years, I had been living with severe chronic health conditions. And I had gotten to a point where I was not sure that I was going to physically survive for much longer. So I knew that I needed to do something different, but I just didn't know what because I had searched high and low. I had tried everything under the sun, so I thought, and I hadn't found the answer yet. And that's when it came to me, which is this active relaxation method. What I realized was that I had been in the habit of giving so much attention to my thoughts, and I made this connection where I realized that actually there is a vicious cycle. The more that I was trying to solve the problem in my thoughts, the tenser I would get. And the more tension I had, the worse I felt, which then led me to believe that I had a bigger problem that I had to solve. So I would think about it some more, which would lead to more tension, which would lead to a greater sense of a problem. And round it would go. And I thought, well, that's not working. So what I tried instead completely changed my life. And that's the active relaxation method. Now, this method, which I'm going to really, when you really become skillful with it, it doesn't actually have any steps per se. But in order to describe it to you, and when you're initially getting started with it, it can be useful to understand it as having 3 steps. And those 3 steps are pause, scan, and release. So pause means, and you can do this right now as we're here together. So pause means that you simply notice you're here now and you can shift your attention to the sensations, the physical sensations occurring in your body. That's it. Just turn your attention to the physical sensations in the body. Scan means to gently and lightly, systematically scan through the sensations in the body. I like to do this from head to toe. You can do it whatever way makes sense to you. And then release means as you are systematically scanning through the sensations in the body, to notice whatever it's possible to let go of and to just let go of that. Now, importantly, Release or letting go does not mean getting rid of. For many of us, the old habit is trying to get rid of, but that's actually what we need to let go of. We need to let go of that habit of trying to get rid of, trying to push it away, trying to avoid, trying to keep it, trying to grab it, trying to hold on, trying to get rid of all of that stuff. So we want to just notice whatever that unnecessary tension and effort is that we're making that we can let go of easily now. Only that. Even if it's just the smallest thing, even if it's nothing, that's perfectly fine. So just gently scanning and releasing, scanning and releasing, scanning and releasing. And as you do this, you'll immediately notice that that vicious cycle is interrupted. So there's an immediate benefit because that vicious cycle of constant worry, anxiety, stress, thinking about it, tension, and all the rest is leading to unending problems. So to interrupt that immediately makes a positive change. And as you continue to work with this method, things will continue to improve. You will discover that you can actually live with more ease, more relaxation, more peace. And you will notice that you have that ability with more space so that you don't have to react to everything. You don't have to believe your thoughts. You can simply be aware. You can be curious instead of assuming that any of it is true. So that is the active relaxation method. If you were to take nothing else away from this today, that is the number one thing that I recommend that you focus on. Because that one thing, when you apply it consistently every single day, will, I guarantee, will change your life for the better. There is no way that it could not. I know that it might seem like, really, that thing, that could help? It's so simple. If everybody, if it was that effective, everybody would know about it. I know, right? I mean, it seems like everybody should know about it because it's so simple, and yet they don't, surprisingly. But that's why I share this. That's why when I first discovered that, I started shouting it out from the hilltops, almost, I mean, metaphorically, not literally. That would have been a little insane. But I wrote books. I wrote a lot of books. I wrote books about it, describing it from every possible angle I could think of, trying to get the word out because I thought this is the thing that's going to change the world. I really did. I thought the world's just been waiting for this. Everybody is going to be so happy to receive this. It's going to be the biggest thing since sliced bread. Yeah, it caught on a little bit, but not nearly like I thought it would. But I'm still here. I'm still here describing it. And for those who receive it, they consistently tell me, Joey, you're right. I didn't believe it at first, they tell me. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Is that I thought that was sounded kind of silly, but I took your word for it because I trust you and I put it into practice. And lo and behold, it's changed my life. So I know it can change your life. It consistently works as long as you work it.